Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie. And in this video, I'm going to be looking at the weekend of August the 3rd and 4th, 2024. So I want to start off by wishing Barack Obama a happy birthday. Sunday, the 4th, is going to be his 63rd birthday. And I have his birth chart, and I am absolutely convinced that he was born in Hawaii. I don't take the view, but he was born in Indonesia or Kenya or wherever. We've got a birth certificate, and his chart works really well for that location, Hawaii. So I know some people think he was born outside of the United States, but for myself, I'm fairly convinced that he was born in Hawaii. Now, Barack Obama may be important. You know, when you look around to see what people are saying about Barack Obama right now, you kind of get the impression that he's actually running for a third term. And obviously he's not running for a third term because you can only serve 2 full terms as far as I understand the US Constitution. So that's it. But there is a suggestion that he is a major power broker, and we have Kamala Harris as almost certainly the Democrat nominee. And astrology aside, I think that Kamala Harris is arguably the weakest candidate that any political party has put forward in the US, maybe for a generation, maybe since living memory. I think she is a very weak candidate. I mean, I get, I'm not really talking about astrology. I'm just talking about my impression, looking at the news and so forth. If one is voting for Kamala Harris, one is not really voting for Kamala Harris, one is perhaps voting for other people who will be supporting her and advising her. I mean, I suppose she's not unique in that sense. I think that George Bush Jr., in a way, was quite a weak president. I think that it was his advisors, people like Dick Cheney, who were really running the show. Ronald Reagan's second term, maybe his first term as well. I don't think Ronald Reagan entirely knew what was going on. So it's not a unique situation. Even Barack Obama himself, when it came to things like foreign policy, one wonders to what extent he was in control, and there were other people pushing him in the direction he took. So, there is always that issue. But I think with Kamala Harris, I don't think if you're voting for Kamala Harris, you're necessarily voting for Kamala Harris as someone who is running the show. You do have to look at the people who are behind her. I mean, there's no reason not to vote for her, no reason to vote for her. But I think in terms of how much impact she's going to have on policy, I'm not convinced. So this may mean that Barack Obama's horoscope is important. What kind of year he has, what his transits are like at the time of a presidential election may actually tell us something about how it's all going to go. So, people talk about, you've got to look at Kamala Harris's chart, you've got to look at Donald Trump's chart. Yeah, but I think you've also maybe got to look at Barack Obama's chart. Now, I'm just expressing a view here. I'm sure there are many people who think that Barack Obama, he's done his bit as president, he's having a gentle influence, but he has no intention on running a show. Okay, he may have endorsed Kamala Harris, he took his time to endorse her, but eventually he did. So, maybe we can be sort of relaxed about that. But I do feel that we do need to look at Barack Obama's chart. What is interesting about Barack Obama is that he's got his solar return coming up over the next few days, because it's his birthday. The sun returns to where it was when he was born. And we've got a new moon. There is actually a new moon on Sunday. So he's got a new moon locked into his solar return. And that is the other event. So what I'm really talking about in this video is the fact we've got a new moon this this weekend, and I'm going to be talking about the new moon, and I'm also going to be talking about Barack Obama. But before I do that, I want to consider what's happening over the weekend in terms of the astrological events, and of course I want to do my forecasts for 12 signs, and I want to do an I Ching reading. Now, just a reminder, if you like this video, I would really appreciate it if you would press the like button. And if you're not subscribed and you like the video, if you do enjoy my videos, I would really appreciate it if you were to subscribe, because it does make a big difference and it doesn't cost you anything, and it really does support my channel. Okay, so let us look at what is happening today. Not just today, sorry, I'm looking at the whole weekend. So what we have here is a chart for the weekend, and I set this chart for the middle of a weekend when Saturday turns into Sunday. And as is my custom, I set it for New York. And here is the chart. So there is the moon at 8 degrees Leo. So for most of the weekend, well, in some places for all of the weekend, the moon is in Leo. Now, to be precise, the moon goes into Leo, I think, at 9 minutes past midday London time. So if you are in Western Europe, that means that, first half, or Europe in general, first half of Saturday, moon is in late Cancer. Then after lunch, moon is in Leo, and it stays in Leo for the rest of the weekend. If you're in the Americas, moon is in Leo pretty much all weekend, unless you get up really early in the morning. And if you're in Australia or New Zealand, then it's 50-50. Half the weekend, first half of the weekend, almost all of Saturday, you've got moon in Cancer. Last half of the weekend on Sunday, you've got the moon in Leo. So that is a bit of a change, moon moving from Cancer to Leo. That means that there is a lot less water around. Moon moves from Cancer, a water sign, into Leo, a fire sign, and the Leo emphasis is there all over again. We have Venus in Leo, Sun in Leo, Moon in Leo. So it's going to be quite a Leo weekend, and with a moon in Leo, getting a bit of attention is going to matter, and we're going to have to consider other people's need for attention. And it's with moon in Leo, some people feel a little bit fragile with the moon in this sign. The moon in Leo, moon doesn't actually work particularly well in this sign. I think the problem is that in Leo, the moon actually doesn't have any dignity in here, and so we can want attention, we can want to be taken seriously, but it's just maybe difficult to really assert ourselves, to get people to notice us. And so it may apply to other people. So if you see that someone is on the fringes, it seems to lack confidence, maybe it's a time to draw people in, and flattery and praise can be very useful today. I think we ourselves will appreciate flattery and praise, and also other people are going to appreciate our flattery and praise. So perhaps if we feel this burning need to be praised and to be flattered, we should respond to this by giving other people flattery and praise. Maybe that will just create the right kind of environment, and it will actually make us feel good. I mean, obviously you can't flatter and praise people just for the sake of it. If they're sort of hopeless, then I don't know, you don't want to give them a false sense of confidence. But we need to be acknowledged, and other people need to be acknowledged with the moon moving into Leo. And the moon is moving towards newness. It's the beginning of the lunar cycle or it's about to be the beginning of the lunar cycle. So new moons are always sort of a bit of a two-edged sword. I mean, it's good that the moon is moving from being waning to waxing. The waxing moon is more fortunate than the waning moon. In Vedic astrology, the moon, when it's waning, is, I believe, a malefic, and it's a benefic when it's waxing, all things being equal. And so the waxing moon, the fact the moon is about to wax is good news. But at the same time, the moon is very close to the sun, and the moon is in Leo, kind of a bit vulnerable in Leo. And so there may be a certain sense of being overwhelmed with the moon's so close to the sun. I think that although getting attention is important, we shouldn't regard it as the be-all and end-all. So if we feel we're just being slightly ignored over the weekend, we shouldn't worry about it too much. Now, as far as when the new moon is concerned, when the new moon actually is, I suppose we should just quickly look at that. So actually, London time, the new moon is 12:13 p.m. So it's around lunchtime, the new moon in London. So new moon is going to be sort of it's quite in the morning, fairly early morning. In the Americas, the new moon will be this evening, Sunday evening. So this new moon will be Sunday evening, Australia or New Zealand, and it will be early Sunday morning in the Australia. So to an extent, it does depend where you are. Now, this new moon, as I'll be going into more detail about it later in the video, but this new moon is actually sextile. It's sextile Jupiter. So what's happening is that the moon is applying to a sextile with Jupiter, and so in the end, that is quite a fortunate event. So the new moon happens, and then it makes the sextile to Jupiter. So there's a kind of a fortunate ending to it. And so the new moon, right at the weekend, may to an extent really start to turn out well for us, sort of right at the end. Now, if one wants to distinguish between Saturday and Sunday, I would have said that, Saturday is perhaps going to be a more complicated day than Sunday in some respects, because on Saturday, we've got the sign change. We've got the sign change from Cancer to Leo. That's especially the case if you're not in the Americas. If you're in the Americas, it's pretty much Saturdays is Leo through and through. So we've got the sign change on Saturday, and we've got the moon makes a trine to Neptune just before it changes sign. That moon trine Neptune is not really going to be important if you're in the Americas, but outside the Americas, it's certainly something to consider. And there may be, just before the moon moves into Leo, a great sense of sensitivity, just getting everything, or at least being aware of everything. But perhaps it's up to us how we actually use this emotionally derived information. And also on Saturday, we've got moon opposition Pluto. So moon moves into Leo, and then straight away it makes an opposition to Pluto. And so that moon opposition Pluto can represent a sense of tension, a feeling that there may be a bit of a struggle on an emotional level, and we may feel at the same time that we can't really express ourselves. It was so easy to express ourselves when the moon was in Cancer, but from an emotional perspective, moon goes into Leo, makes an opposition to Pluto. It just may be a little more difficult to tell the world who we are and what we want, and we just may be afraid of revealing too much. So you go into Sunday, you've got the new moon, you've got the moon sextile Mars, you've got the moon sextile Jupiter. So you could say that this new moon, if you use sextiles to midpoints, I don't generally use sextiles to midpoints, but with this new moon is sextile the Mars-Jupiter midpoint, and I think that could actually be quite fortunate. There could be a real lift on Sunday with this new moon, and it may just feel that things are getting better, and it's a new cycle, and we just may feel a certain sense of optimism. That's possible, but I'm just a bit nervous about saying that in such a sort of simple way, simply because new moons have their own problems. And new moons, it's because the moon is combust. It's exactly conjunct the sun. And there are other issues going on with this new moon. This new moon, it is on the Mars Hades midpoint. I mean, I'll be talking about that later. So it's not an unmitigating success, this new moon. I think there could be some issues. So I don't know. Perhaps these issues relate more to the world out there, to the world at large, and less to us as individuals. And perhaps as us as individuals, we can just harness the fact that the new moon is, broadly speaking, sextile the Mars-Jupiter conjunction. So I think if on Sunday we can really look for the positives and try not to make things too complicated, then things should be okay. So that's the broad geocentric picture as I see it. I would have said that the weekend is dominated by this new moon. And one other thing I should point out is that Mercury is about to go retrograde. Mercury goes retrograde on Monday. So Mercury is pretty much stationary this weekend. And that may have an impact. We may just feel that something is coming to a standstill. If we haven't said what we wanted to say, then maybe we've missed our chance. And I'm also concerned, I suppose, with the fact that you've got Mercury retrograde, or about to be retrograde, pretty much at the same time as you've got a new moon. And when you have Mercury going retrograde or stationary at the same time as a lunation, just a day apart, from a global perspective, that can be difficult. As I already discussed a few days ago, I had a video on the markets and the economy, and I did point out that when the two of them coincide, you can get things happening in the markets, and perhaps one has to see what happens on Monday. I don't know what the markets are doing now on Friday, but we have to perhaps see the weekend, Friday, Monday, as just a period where the world is responding to these two events happening so close together. Now, turning to the heliocentric picture, heliocentrically, there are some things which we do need to point out. There is Mars. Heliocentrically, Mars has just gone into Taurus, and Mars makes a square to Pluto. So Mars square Pluto, that is about energy, power, people throwing their weight around. And it just may be globally that you've got sort of news going on about what is going on what's happening in the world's trouble spots, whether it's Gaza or Ukraine. I suppose there's a lot of focus on the Middle East at the moment, with this sort of, I suppose, tit for tat between Israel and Iran. So what is Mars square Pluto going to be doing? And at the same time, you have got the Earth is actually making some quite powerful midpoints over the weekend. So we have got the Earth is square the Mars-Uranus midpoint. It is conjunct the Mercury-Saturn midpoint, and it's, I think, semi-square sesquiquadrate the Uranus-Pluto midpoint. So the Earth is running into turbulence, and I'm particularly interested by Earth square the Mars-Uranus midpoint. I don't know whether you can see this. So you can see, look, if you look at Mars, look at Uranus. Mars is at around 0 Taurus. Uranus is about 24 Taurus. So the midpoint is going to be 12 Taurus. Earth is at 12 Aquarius. So Earth is square the Mars-Uranus midpoint. And that is quite tense, and it adds to what I was saying with Earth square Pluto. So it could be quite a tense, aggressive weekend, at least from a heliocentric perspective. We didn't quite see this when we looked at things geocentrically, but of course it's all happening with this new moon. So those are the main things going on heliocentrically. Mercury is sesquiquadrate Uranus, so that sort of adds to the tension, I think, Mercury being 135 degrees from Uranus. So overall, I think there is evidence to suggest that in some areas it might actually be quite a tense weekend, especially from a sort of on a global level, maybe not so much on an individual level unless we live in a trouble spot. But I suppose with Earth square Mars-Uranus midpoint, all of us have to be a little bit careful. Okay, so that's the heliocentric picture, and I'm now going to look at today from the view of the 12 signs. So these are my forecasts for the 12 signs for today, which is, well, not for today, for the weekend of August the 3rd and the 4th, 2024. Aries. There's a new moon this weekend, and I think that in most cases that this new moon is going to be good news. Over the last few days, Aries, you haven't felt yourself to be on great form. You may have felt that you weren't really able to express yourself as much as you'd like, and you perhaps felt that in many cases you had no choice but to hold back. Perhaps it just didn't feel that the time was right, you didn't feel that you were being appreciated, and you just didn't feel that you were really able to engage with the world. Perhaps you just enjoyed your own space, and you maybe wanted to focus on your home or your family, and you didn't want to put your head above the parapet. Well, this new moon is in Leo, and Leo is an Aries-friendly sign. Leo is in a fire sign, and Leo is a fire sign, and Aries is a fire sign, and this new moon, I think it very much emphasizes your creativity and what you can do that makes you special, what makes you stand out. And so it's a time for just tuning into your creativity. And by creativity, I'm not just talking about, making things. I'm talking about just the natural spark and fire of who you are. So perhaps we could talk about social creativity and just you being very much an actor out there in the world, not reacting, not having to constantly respond to what's going on, what other people are doing. No, you are at the moment in a stage where you should be actually making things happen. You are the actor, as I've just said. And what makes this new moon really good is that it sort of has a favourable relationship with a Mars-Jupiter conjunction. So we've got a Sun-Moon conjunction, because the new moon is by definition a Sun-Moon conjunction. And this new moon conjunction, it makes a sextile to the Mars-Jupiter conjunction. In fact, the new moon is going to be sextile the Mars-Jupiter midpoint, and you're going to start to feel this, as the weekend progresses, you're going to feel this more and more. And so I think, Aries, this is a time when you really can take fortunate action. Your actions will work, I think, extremely well, and I think that people are going to really appreciate whatever you're doing. And I think that, it's a time when people want excitement. They don't want to spend too much time just thinking and feeling, and you're just the person to provide the spark. And so over the weekend, you can be a very powerful force. And at the same time, I understand that when people look at horoscopes, they often want to know about relationships. If relationships matter to you, then I think it's going to be a very good weekend for relationships. As good as it gets? Well, I'm not saying as good as it gets, but I would have said 4 stars out of 5. So there is a possibility of improving relationships. Your spark is going to be very much in demand, your energy. And I don't think in most cases your energy will be particularly jarring. I don't think there's any need to offend anyone or to upset people. Okay, some people can't handle you, but that's their problem. But in general, whatever you've got to give out, I think it's going to be very much appreciated. And I suppose some of you might be concerned about romance. I mean, that is the issue, isn't it? There's always this pressure, isn't there, to talk about romance. I mean, some people, that's what they expect from an astrologer. But if I had to say, well, is this a good weekend from a romantic perspective? Well, I would have said it was. So if romance is important to you and you want to, I don't know, as they say, boost your love life, then yeah, this weekend might very much be the time to do it. Because we've got this new moon in Leo. Leo is, as they say, is in the 5th house. The 5th house in astrology is often connected with romance, and I won't say relationships. It's kind of a bit of a myth that the 5th house is connected with relationships. It's the 7th house, really, but the sort of the romantic side of relationships in a sort of uncomplicated way. Yeah, I think there is a 5th house association there. So overall, Aries, relationships should work out extremely well. Now, one thing to point out on the theme of relationships is that Venus is your relationship ruler, because Venus rules the 7th house, rules Libra. And Venus is on the verge of leaving Leo. It's conjunct Regulus, but it's changing sign. It's about to go into Virgo. I think Venus goes into Virgo on Monday. So that might tell you something about someone you know, or at least some of the important people in your life. They may be about to experience a change. So with Venus moving from Leo into Virgo, it may be that someone is about to become more sensible, more serious. And if you see that someone appears to be fun-loving this weekend, and they seem to be a great person to have around, that's not necessarily the person you're going to get, because Venus is about to move into Virgo. So that would suggest, especially if you're in a new relationship, and not just in a romantic sense, if you're in a new relationship, perhaps this relationship has perhaps started over the last few weeks, the person you're seeing is not necessarily the person you're going to get. And with Venus moving into Virgo, you might see a more serious, a more materialistic, even a more transactional side to someone's personality. But I don't want to bother you about that too much. That is in a way, a note for the future. And it should not take away, Aries, from the fact that I think it's going to be, or can be, a very exciting and fun-filled weekend. Taurus, you perhaps feel, Taurus, that you need to get your priorities right. You might take the view that there are just some things that are just up in the air, and you don't fully understand them, and things are getting a little bit complicated, and it may be that you just want to bring things down to earth. And I think you're going to want to be in control, and you are really not going to be in the mood for doing anything unusual or for straying onto strange territory. So I would have said, Taurus, that it's probably not a time, for example, for going on adventures. You know, if you leave your home and familiarity too far behind, you're quickly going to become lost. And okay, not necessarily literally lost, but you're just going to feel a bit out of sorts, and you're just wondering where your real roots are. And roots and comfort and feeling that you're in the right place is going to be very important. And perhaps you need to consider your attitude to your own home. So, we have this new moon in Leo. And by and large, this new moon happens once a year. And with the new moon in Leo, many Taurians perhaps are thinking about their own home and what it means. And ideally, it should be kind of a new cycle. Your attitude to your home is changing. Your old approach is over, and now you're seeing things in a new way. And in many cases, Taurus, you might feel that it's time to make some changes at home. You'll be looking at where you live, wherever it might be, whether you own the property, whether you rent it. You'll be just thinking about it and you'll come in with a different view. You'll know where you want to live. You'll know how you want to live. And if your home doesn't match, you are going to want to make a change. Now, that might mean beautifying your own home, changes in terms of decoration. And just remember, this new moon is sextile Venus, it's sextile Mars, sextile Jupiter. So you do have a positive vision about your home. However, if you feel that where you live does not match your expectations, does not match your internal visions, and it cannot match your internal visions, it may be that some Taurians, perhaps over the next couple of weeks, will reach the conclusion that it's time to make a move. It doesn't mean to say you have to do anything immediately, but it's just will be the beginning of that. New moons are about beginnings. It's that first seed of a new idea. And that new idea is about perhaps realizing maybe that where you're living doesn't suit your purposes. You're not entirely comfortable there. And you might then be thinking about how you can make a change. Again, I must make it clear. I'm not necessarily talking about having to make a move. I'm not talking about anything immediate. It just may be the first thoughts. And many of you, if you feel your home is not right, are not going to feel you have to move. You just feel you're going to have to make some changes. So that is something you might want to consider. And of course, this new moon is going to be especially important if your work is at all connected with real estate. I mean, I suppose a lot of people in America are real estate agents. That's true. And at the same time, people have rentals, so that's another thing to consider. Yeah, a lot of people in America have rentals. That's one thing I've noticed. That's a real issue for people. So if you're in that kind of position, then yeah, that new moon could be quite important. And the new moon in general is just about the foundations of your life, what's important. And Taurus, I think you're going to have a very clear idea about what you want and what you don't want, and if things aren't perfect, you are going to want to make changes. And talking about change, Venus is conjunct Regulus, and it is about to change sign. In fact, Monday Venus moves into Virgo. So whether it's very late Leo or very late Virgo, the Venus is certainly on Regulus, and I think that Regulus is the royal star, and I think it does give you a lift. I think it does give you a sense of power and authority, and it also perhaps allows you to get in touch with people who also have power and authority. And I think in a general sense it kind of gives a boost to your luck. But with Venus moving into Virgo, it may very soon be the case that you do become perhaps more practical, and you realize that you have to consider the financial side of things, the material details. All of these, they do matter to you, they do have to be considered, and you can't have an entirely sentimental view of other people. You may start to think, well, which people are useful, which people are not useful. I mean, these are very much Venus in Virgo kind of thoughts. Doesn't sound very pleasant, but you know, there is a time for everything, and Venus in Virgo is going to be thinking about that. By the way, Venus, of course, will also be making a conjunction to Mercury. I'll be talking about that conjunction between Venus and Mercury next week. But that Venus conjunct Mercury is something to be looking forward to. And it does indicate that you are moving into a time, Taurus, when you can really be focused on yourself and be focused on your own interests, but also be actually very creative. Maybe your creativity can relate to business and entrepreneurialism, but it can also relate to just being creative. So that is actually something to look forward to. Gemini. Well, you have to realize, Gemini, that Mercury is slowing down. Mercury is actually slowing down in a very big way. Mercury is, of course, your ruler, and Mercury is about to come to a standstill. In other words, Mercury is about to be stationary retrograde, and then for the next 3 weeks, until the end of August, Mercury will be going backwards from the Earth's perspective. So Geminis often feel Mercury retrograde more than most other signs, and with Mercury going retrograde, you just may feel that there are things that have to be reconsidered, and you might have felt that you were on the verge of doing something. You're ready to take the action, you're ready to take the initiative, but with Mercury going retrograde, you might just have second thoughts. You'll be asking yourself whether it's something that you really want to do, and events may confirm this. So if you've got big plans for the next, over the next few weeks, do consider the possibility that these plans might have to be delayed. Not by a long way, or if not delayed, at least changed. And I don't think you can expect other people to be especially reliable. So if anyone's made a promise to you, then treat it with a pinch of salt, and do follow it up. If someone has said they're going to do something, don't just assume they're going to remember. Do give them a reminder beforehand, and don't assume that people have understood your instructions. And also, don't assume that you have understood other people's instructions. You might be doing something, you're absolutely sure you know what you're doing, and you do it, and you realize you've made a mistake, not because you have done anything stupid, but because the task has not been properly defined. But I don't really want to go on too much about Mercury going retrograde. That's perhaps something we need to talk about next week. At the moment, what Geminis perhaps need to focus on is the fact that there is a new moon. New moons are always interesting, and this new moon perhaps is about how you move from A to B. That's one possibility about this new moon. Do consider how you get to places with the new moon. So, for example, if you have a regular journey, some journey you're doing all the time, it may be with this new moon you perhaps realize that the route can be changed, and by changing the route you may be able to get from A to B in a more efficient way. Or it could be that you're going to start making a regular journey. It will be the beginning. So if you start going from A to B in a new way over the next few days, you may find that you just continue with this journey, maybe for a very long time. So that's one possibility of how the new moon might work. The new moon also, I think, challenges you to look at your immediate environment, the people around you, the people you see all the time. For example, your neighbors. I'm looking out of the window and I see people going for walks. They take their dogs for walks. Some of these people I've talked to, some of these people I haven't talked to, but they're there all the time. I see these same faces every single day. There is this woman that walks past the window. She has a dog. She skulks. She seems to skulk on the road, and she smokes a lot, and she kind of will stop on the road, and she will sometimes with a dog. Yeah, and she'll have a cigarette, and she doesn't look in a great mood, actually. But, that's what I'm talking about. There are people you see all the time. You wonder about them. What kind of people are they? And with the new moon in Leo, this is perhaps a time when you can start to get to know these people. You can talk to them, get to know their stories, get to know perhaps why they're skulking. No, that's a bit too much. I don't think that woman is ever going to talk about why she's skulking, but you see what I mean. Do get to know the people around you. And of course, we're talking about neighbours. What is your relationship with your neighbour? Whether you are living in an apartment block or you're living in a house when you've got another house next to it, whatever. It could be your neighbour if you go into work. It may be someone you see all the time. Just these people be your neighbours, and you may not know much about them, but this new moon is, I think, encouraging you to get to know people and seeing what you've got in common. And I suppose if you have had any recent disputes or arguments with your neighbours, now might be a time to revisit this argument or dispute, to kind of consider what is it all about. And maybe it's a situation where a dispute can actually be resolved. So that is a possibility, and that is because this new moon is sextile Mars and it's sextile Jupiter. So it's sort of the new moon is sextile the Mars-Jupiter midpoint, and so Mars and Jupiter are both in Gemini, and it's perhaps about actively taking the initiative with the people around you, people you see all the time, and being able to create something new. And in the process, it's absolutely possible that you can deal with recent arguments and there can be some kind of resolution. Now, that might seem like hard work, but it's just something to consider. And I'm not, with this new moon, I'm not talking about anything just necessarily happening this weekend. It's more about the next, the next fortnight perhaps. So do consider that possibility, Gemini. Cancer. It might be a time, Cancer, when you might want to have another look at your finances. And I suppose I've been talking about your finances quite a lot recently. That's because there's been a lot of stuff going on in Leo. And of course, Leo is the sign following Cancer. And then, of course, in astrology, Leo often, from a Cancer perspective, is related to money. And so do give it careful consideration, if appropriate. I mean, maybe your financial affairs are completely in order and you're just comfortable with everything and there's nothing that needs to be done. But most Cancerians are concerned about money. Money does matter to them. Cancer is a very security-orientated sign. The symbol for Cancer is a crab. It's in its shell. It understands its security. And so do have another look at your money and do consider your attitude to your money. And it just may be that some changes are required. And this new moon could perhaps be some kind of new beginning for you, when you can really look at your finances and your income and your savings, and you can look at the whole thing again, looking at it afresh, and you will perhaps get some new insights. And this is especially the case since this new moon is sextile Jupiter and sextile Mars, and you don't have to make a big fuss about it. You don't have to tell people what you're doing, that you are having another look at your finances. In fact, there's an argument for saying you probably shouldn't tell anyone what you're doing. Just quietly, without any fanfare, give consideration to your finances and reach your own conclusions. And I think in most cases, your conclusions will be absolutely spot on. Now, that is something of a longer term thing. It's what this new moon is about, what it begins, what starts on this, what starts on this new moon, and perhaps how the next fortnight, even month, unfolds. Now, as far as this weekend is concerned, I think that you have to understand your limits. It's not a weekend for pushing yourself too far, too hard, because it's a new moon. A new moon is an event where the moon is conjunct the sun, and so the moon can be under quite a lot of pressure when it's conjunct the sun, especially in Leo. The moon possibly doesn't function too well in Leo, especially when it's conjunct the sun, and you just might feel a little bit overwhelmed by things. And so do understand your limits. Don't take on too much. And I would probably say that you should avoid powerful people. People who are just into themselves, have big personalities, but maybe aren't actually offering too much. Now, there are powerful people who are great forces of good in your life. And of course, those sort of people you can really benefit from. But generally people that make a lot of noise, people that are overwhelming, and these kind of people should be avoided. And also you should avoid financial issues that come from outside. So let me explain that. So I've just said that money is something you should be focusing on this weekend, having another look at it. But here I'm talking about doing it in your own way, at your own pace. If financial issues are getting imposed upon you from the outside, then you need to be very, very cautious. So, for example, if you are being pressured to spend money by another person, pressured to make a financial commitment, whether it's by a friend, a member of your family, or by a salesperson, if you are aware of that pressure, or indeed the pressure of advertising, I suppose isn't it, how the internet just knows what you want, doesn't it? You want something, and you want to spend money on something, and the internet sort of magically knows it somehow, and so these ads keep popping up, and that could be another kind of pressure. So you've really got to ignore that pressure, and you've got to be self-sufficient, and you've just got to consider what could upset your equilibrium, and finance-based pressure could upset your equilibrium, and there just may be a moment where your judgment is not 100%, and you just make a commitment that you later regret. So do tread very carefully when it comes to money being money, and particularly people talking about money and people recommending particular financial courses of action. In this area, I think it's just very important that you are self-sufficient. Leo, things are starting, I suppose, because we've got a new moon this weekend, and it's your new moon. It's a new moon in Leo. So, I've just been talking about Barack Obama. I'll be talking a lot about Barack Obama in this video, and it's his birthday on Sunday, and he has his sun in Leo, so this new moon is going to have an impact on him. Maybe you've got Leo rising, and moon in Leo is going to have an influence, and I think overall it is a fortunate influence. It's I suppose it's a new beginning, isn't it? It's the start of something, and it's a start that doesn't need to have a fanfare, doesn't need to be announced. Because when things start, it's probably best to be relatively secretive about it. It's the first beginnings, when you're not entirely sure of yourself. Even discussing your ideas with someone else may be risky, because they might not actually understand what you're talking about, and you might not get positive feedback, and a good idea, a good plan can actually be destroyed by talking about it too much. So, Leo, think about what you're trying to start. And, we're talking about perhaps humble origins. The new moon is, in many respects, a time of silence. You could say that the new moon is a time of silence, and the full moon is a time when there's a lot of noise. And so this new moon is the beginning of something. It's just when you start, it's that first idea, when you start to slowly get things off the ground. And how you experience all of this may to an extent depend on your time zone. I think that the new moon, and it's not just a new moon, it's a moon moving into Leo, into your sign. Yeah, sure, if you are in Australia and New Zealand, you don't really experience the moon moving into Leo until late Saturday. If you're in the Americas, it's early on Saturday, so it kind of depends to an extent. But still, Moon is going into Leo, the preparation for the new moon. It's a preparation for a new beginning. And this new moon itself is sextile Jupiter, which adds to the good fortune of it. I think that it just may be that when you're with people, you feel a certain sense of positivity, and you can really feel the possibilities there. And it's like when you're surrounded by people, it's not about discussing your ideas. You keep a lot secret because it is a new moon, but other people can inspire you. You look at how people are behaving, you look at what people are doing, and you get inspiration from them, and that perhaps informs you about this new beginning that I think that Leos are about to experience. Now, one thing I should say is that in terms of your social life, do consider all of the people around you, and consider the possibility that someone is on the verge of leaving the scene. Someone you've had quite a lot to do with, but they may be about to make an exit. I think this person is probably more likely to be female than male, so some woman who you've had a lot to do with recently, maybe on the verge of moving somewhere else, or going somewhere else, or being in a different space, and there seems to be a little bit of unfinished business that maybe you need to sort out before this person disappears forever. Well, not necessarily forever, but for a time. So, I mean, it may not be a woman, but I think it's more likely to be a woman. But just someone maybe on the verge of making an exit. So if there's something that needs to be said, then don't perhaps wait too long, because otherwise you might miss your chance. So if you see the opportunity, then perhaps you should go for it. And another point about your social life and the people around you, it may be quite a good idea to do some fixing. By fixing, I mean the position may need to be fixed. So there may be a little bit of flux in terms of all your contacts. People sort of moving around, perhaps being a little bit flaky, unstable, unreliable. And there's actually something you can do to bring people together and to create some kind of social structure. And I think it might feel that you're being a little bit too authoritarian about it, but I think it might be something that could be quite useful. Somehow just creating some structure could give your social life and your contacts increased stability and permanence. Virgo, you probably feel that this weekend you're a little bit sensitive in your own way. You need time to reflect on what's going on, and I don't think that you want to be too much of an extrovert. There are just things you feel that you just want to hold back, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And perhaps there are going to be times when you just have this sort of inner realization, and an inner realization doesn't need anyone else's help. Indeed, when you're alone, when you've got time to imagine and dream, then you can really center yourself, because Virgo as a sign, it can get exhausted. There's a lot of nervous energy around in a Virgo, with a Virgo, and that nervous energy can get out of control. And so, Virgo, give yourself space this weekend. I think that is really important. And if in doubt, don't do it. So if you have, for example, I don't know, if you're going to a party or you don't really feel whether it's the right thing to do, it's okay to cancel. Time spent on your own, I think, can be very useful. And with this new moon, there is a new moon this weekend, and this new moon is about something starting for you, but starting at an almost unconscious level. Or it may even just be about a dream. A dream just tells you about a new beginning, about somewhere, some direction you should be going in. And to begin with, it's just very subtle. It's a dream. You could forget the dream almost immediately unless you write it down. But at an unconscious level, something is happening, and things are starting to move. And at the same time, we've got Mercury, which is your ruler, coming to a standstill. Remember, Mercury goes retrograde on Monday. So with Mercury, your ruler, coming to a standstill, you're starting to have second thoughts anyway. You may feel that you're on the verge of doing something, on the verge of perhaps taking an initiative, but Mercury going retrograde, you're thinking, hold on, is this what you want to do? Or it just may be that external events are just holding you back and saying, you just don't get it together. So ready to do something, but on reflection, you decide to step back. And that's probably the right thing to do. Remember, Mercury goes retrograde for 3 weeks, and I think Mercury when it leaves Virgo, it doesn't go back into Virgo until, it doesn't go back into Virgo until 8th or 9th of September. So it just may be even until early September. You perhaps, there may be a certain sense in which you need to bide your time. So Virgo, in some respects, it's not an exciting weekend, or rather perhaps it shouldn't be an exciting weekend. You don't actually want an exciting weekend. You want a weekend where you're able to reflect and to reconsider your priorities and to sort of center yourself. And to do that, I don't think that you need any outside help. Though I should end on a positive note, and it does seem that if you are with other people, if you do happen to be spending time with other people, there's something actually about you that is really quite attractive and charismatic. So it's not as if you're unappealing. There's actually something about you that is actually very appealing, and you are going to actually be very good at projecting your charms. So that's perhaps something you can use, but it's got to very much be on your terms, not in a sort of high-profile kind of way. But your charms are very real, and so if there's any one particular person you feel you need to impress, for whatever reason, whether it's for business reasons or romantic reasons or whatever, I think that you should be very effective. So do take advantage of it, but very much on your terms and in quite a sort of low profile, understated kind of way. Libra, you are in, I think, quite a strong place right now. You are able to project power, and I think that people are going to take you seriously. You know, you'll give the impression that there's something about you that is important, and I don't think anyone is going to want to ignore you right now. It's just that you just give the impression that you've really got something to offer. So it really doesn't matter that you are available, that you can be seen and heard. It's certainly not a weekend for hiding. People have to know where you are, and I suppose, you know, the more people you can meet, more people you can have around you, well, you know, then so much the better. And I suppose that in many respects tunes into your own strengths. You know, all things being equal, Libra is a fairly sociable sign. It understands that other people matter. It understands the connections between people, and so this side of your personality, this integral side to your personality, I think is very much emphasized, and you're going to perhaps be aware that it is a time for some kind of new start. So when you look at your social life and all your friends and your associates and everyone you know, then, you know, it's going well in some respects, but could be better. And it may be that some Librans may feel that they need to do something to perhaps relaunch their social life. Perhaps you need to consider mixing with new groups of people. You know, maybe in terms of how you run your social life, perhaps getting involved in a new activity, which is a highly social activity. Now, that activity could be related to an interest, or it could be related to political activity, for example. I mean, I'm just saying this as an example. I mean, I know we've got a lot of political activity right now. We've got, well, certainly in Washington State, you've got local elections coming up on August the 6th, I think. Is that right? Something like that, August the 5th maybe. But, you know, getting involved in political activity might be something that Librans might want to do, or fighting for a cause. It's not just because it's not the cause that really matters. It's just the people you meet on the way. So that might be something that Librans might consider, finding ways to link up with like-minded people. I mean, it just seems that socially, you know, things are fine, but I just think that things could be a little better. And by embarking on something new, I think that you could benefit in many ways. And it's not something that you necessarily have to do this weekend. I mean, sure, this weekend does see a new moon in Leo, and that new moon represents a start. But over the next 2 to 4 weeks, you can perhaps take action to bring, you know, new people into your life and to associate with new people. And I think that could be something very useful that, you know, that you would enjoy doing. And this new moon is sextile Jupiter, so I think for you, Libra, it's quite a fortunate new moon. And it's the new moon sextile Jupiter. It's also sextile Mars, and the new moon sextile a Mars-Jupiter conjunction is going to, I think, give you a boost. And it seems that by connecting with other people, you're just going to give yourself a new perspective. And I think that's really what you need right now. Yeah, things are good, but things could be better, even better. So I would have said, don't be shy, but don't necessarily be in a hurry. Things will take their course. So you start the initiative. You start interacting. You start perhaps talking to new people, meeting new people, and then you just watch how things change, maybe even how things snowball. And we do have this interesting thing going on, is that Venus and Mercury are actually about to switch signs. So Venus is your ruler, of course. It's conjunct Regulus, but it's about to move into Virgo. At the same time, Mercury is in Virgo and it's about to move into Leo. And that's kind of interesting. It does indicate that there will be a change of emphasis in terms of your social life quite soon. And with Venus moving into Virgo, it's perhaps a little bit of a challenge, Venus moving into Virgo, because it's going to happen very soon. It's going to happen on Monday. And perhaps you need to prepare for this challenge. Maybe before Venus moves into Virgo, i.e. over the course of this weekend, it might be a good idea to do something to start the ball rolling in terms of other people, interaction, making arrangements. Because if you wait until next week and you've got nothing planned, then you might no longer be in the mood. And then some of your plans, some of your social plans might have to be delayed until Venus moves into Libra. And of course, Venus doesn't move into Libra, well, for quite a long time. When does Venus move into Libra? Okay, Venus moves into Libra. When does Venus move? Okay, Venus moves into Libra on the 29th of August. I mean, that's not so long to wait. But it would be a good idea, if you want an early start, to take advantage of this new moon. You just do something. It doesn't have to be a great deal, but just to start the ball rolling would I think be a good idea. Scorpio, it's possibly a weekend where you want to rededicate yourself to a purpose or an ambition. You know, it's always a time of year, all things being equal, when Scorpios are quite focused on the outside world, and they can be actually quite ambitious, and they'll have a good sense of what they need to do and what they want to accomplish. And perhaps now is the start of something. And yes, we've got a new moon this weekend, and I think that this new moon really could have an impact on you. And so with this new moon, which actually is sextile Mars, remember Mars is your ruler. So with this new moon sextile Mars, then I think you might have ideas, or you just might have feelings. You just might have feelings about something you want to do, some direction you want to follow, which could have a business or career nature. So maybe you can get an idea for a new business, or if you've already got a business, an idea for a new direction. If you're an employee, you might want to start doing your job in a different way. Or in certain situations with a new moon, you may just feel that a current line of work isn't quite you, isn't really answering all your needs, and perhaps you'll start to realize that a change may be necessary. But it's not like leaving a job overnight or anything like that. You've got to have another job lined up or another direction lined up for yourself. So there could be a sense in which you are starting to contemplate a change. And if you're unemployed or you're looking for work, then the new moon might very much represent a new beginning. So perhaps could be a new cycle of applying for jobs, perhaps applying for jobs in a different way. So that's another way in which the new moon could be operating. But it's not just about work, this new moon. The new moon can be about just how you present yourself. Presentation matters. You may want to present yourself to the world in a different way and move forward in a different way. And so people might start to see that Scorpio is beginning to change a little here. Now, the new moon might also have a relationship to your mother, if she's still alive. So even if she's not alive, it's about her memory and what that relationship to your mother was, and perhaps how you are related to your mother, perhaps how you are like your mother or not like your mother, and just issues relating to your mother may start to come to the fore with this new moon. Now, I'm saying that because from an astrological point of view, from a Scorpio perspective, the new moon is in the 10th house. Leo has a 10th house relationship in terms of Scorpio. And in standard Western astrology, maybe not Hellenistic astrology, but standard Western astrology, the 10th house is about the mother. And so we could see something relating to your mother, and perhaps what your mother represented, and perhaps how your aspirations relate to your mother. So don't ignore your mother this weekend, and even if she's long dead, because your mother is still very much there, and so is her influence. So that might be a way in which the new moon starts to manifest. And I do think it is positive. It's all about integration, integrating who you are, integrating the past into the present, and making yourself a whole person. So that could be a way in which this new moon manifests. But as I said, on a sort of day-to-day basis, I think that this new moon does have an impact on your ambitions, and I think the fact that this new moon is sextile Mars and sextile Jupiter makes it overall, I think, a pretty fortunate influence, which I'm hoping that you'll be able to make the most of. Not just this weekend. New moons do persist, and this new moon it's the influence of this new moon, may persist for weeks, but just the realizations you have right now could actually be really very important. And one other point, Scorpio, is that I understand that Scorpios sort of have a reputation for being perhaps a little bit introspective, even a little bit negative. But right now, Scorpio, you're actually very capable of being optimistic and positive in terms of what you say. Whether it's the spoken word, the written word, you're able to communicate in a way that just lifts other people up. You may not even know that you're lifting other people up, but when you talk to people, talk about possibilities. Consider why they might be feeling a little bit down, and you'll know how to cheer people up. And verbally, you'll just know how to make an impact. And your words can be just important, and they can be, this weekend, I think, a great force for good. Sagittarius. Yeah, I have been recently a little bit negative when describing Sagittarians, but that was the past, and I think now is a time when Sagittarians really do have a lot to look forward to. I think this is actually a very important time for Sagittarians, when Sagittarians can really be themselves, and they can express their hopes and their aspirations, and many Sagittarians will just start to realize what really is available out there, and they're going to look at the world around them and just feel this great great sense of hope and confidence. And Sagittarius, you don't have to feel that you've got all the answers right now. You have not necessarily got all the answers. There are actually more things to discover. And Sagittarius as a sign is about discovery. It's about not being satisfied with what's right in front of you, and just try to be as open-minded as possible. I suppose if one makes any criticisms about Sagittarians, Sagittarius as a sign is ruled by Jupiter, and Jupiter can be a little bit moralistic. And if someone is moralistic, that means they may be limiting themselves to particular views. And so try not to be too moralistic. I know you have strong beliefs, and that's great that you have strong beliefs, but you should not allow your strong beliefs to limit your experience. So, as you go about your business, as you go about your adventures, just do be as open-minded as possible, and also just consider what other people have got to offer. Because right now it does seem that other people have got a huge amount to offer. But you have to give them a chance. You have to let them express themselves. You let them say what's on their mind, and let them explain. Sagittarius can sometimes cut people off. You hear someone starts talking, and then you just change the subject, or you give them a blast of your Sagittarius energy, and because you're being too positive. A little bit of reflection, giving someone space, is going to be important, because when you allow other people to express their energy, then that energy in turn energizes you. So you don't want to be the only person out there who's got the energy. You've got to let other people be an energetic force, and I think that is certainly something you can do. Now, in terms of ideas, I've said that Sagittarius can be quite moralistic, can be very focused on what is right and wrong, but I would urge you to just try to be open-minded and just tell yourself that you don't necessarily have a monopoly on some fixed truth. The truth is always changing, isn't it? I suppose it's like the expanding universe. The truth is not some static thing. In many cases, okay, I understand in certain cases there is such a thing as a truth, but you shouldn't perhaps regard the truth, particularly on a philosophical level, as something static, that you have your truth and there is only one truth. That you can be flexible, and you can perhaps be open to reevaluating what you believe in. And that doesn't mean to say that you have to do an 180-degree turn, but just be open to new possibilities and new ideas, whether those beliefs are about politics, philosophy, religion, spirituality, whatever they are. I think, Sagittarius, it's just important that you are open to new possibilities. And the more open you are to new possibilities, I just think the more fortunate you'll be, and also the luckier you will be. Because overall, Sagittarius, it's a good time. You are fortunate right now, and I think with open-mindedness, you'll be boosting your good fortune even more. Though there's no point in just being open-minded for the sake of it. I do understand that you need to be working within a broad philosophical framework, but you don't want that framework to be absolutely rigid. You do want to have the possibility of making some changes, of being open to new ideas, and perhaps changing a bit as you experience these new ideas. So I think that overall that's the right approach. But in general, Sagittarius, it looks like being a really good weekend. Capricorn. Capricorn, you are seeing the world perhaps in a slightly new way. I don't think that you were necessarily going out of your way to see things differently, but still it becomes clear to you that things are different. Things are not necessarily as you expected. And I think also, Capricorn, you're aware of complications that maybe other people have perhaps missed. And that's a good thing. I know you don't want to hear the word complications, but if you are aware that something is complicated, that means perhaps that other people are not aware of it. So that might mean that you're now in a situation where you are ahead of the competition. Other people are perhaps being naive. They're doing things which are simply not going to work, and you know they're not going to work, because right now you're starting to, you are starting to see what things are really like, and at the same time you're starting to consider how particular problems can be resolved. So that's great, isn't it? I mean, this weekend, while other people are enjoying themselves, perhaps wasting their time, you're doing stuff that is really useful, that's really critical. And you're perhaps you're doing a lot of thinking, and you're doing a lot of feeling, and maybe you're also doing a lot of researching and just understanding what it takes to be powerful and to have a strong influence. I mean, your power is certainly not going to be obvious this weekend. I don't think that people are going to see you as being a powerful person. They're not going to be thinking too much about you, because they're going to be doing their own thing. They're going to be, having fun, whatever, and just not worrying too much about Capricorn. But something is going on in the Capricorn world. Capricorns are starting to get it. Things are actually falling into place, and it's perhaps in some respects about just quiet preparation. You're preparing, you're understanding, and you're putting yourself in a position, where very soon you're going to be ahead of the competition. So whatever it is, whatever that competition is, it may not be about anything material. It just may be about people competing for attention, competing to be taken seriously. You are, it would seem, taking a step back, but you're taking a step back for a reason. So you could say that what's actually happening this weekend is that the Capricorn dynamo is actually being recharged. It's taking a bit of time to recharge, but it's getting stronger and stronger. So you're actually getting stronger and stronger as the weekend progresses, even though no one seems to be aware of it. Well, you're aware of it, but really that's a good thing, because you don't want people to know what's going on, and soon enough they will realize what's going on. But for the moment, Capricorn, I think you can be quite satisfied with the way things are moving. Aquarius. Other people do matter. I mean, that's just the way it is, isn't it? And there is a new moon this weekend, and this new moon is in Leo, and because of this new moon in Leo, you're going to find that you have to reconsider perhaps some of the people in your life. I mean, who are the most important people in your life? I suppose you can write a list, and when you look at the list of people who are important in your life, particularly not members of your family. I mean, members of your family have a different role, but outside your family, consider who is most important. And you look at that list, and that list may actually be in the process of changing. And with this new moon coming up, this new moon is going to encourage you to have another look. Ask yourself what kind of role someone has in your life. Is it a useful role? Maybe it's not. The new moon is not just about new relationships. It can be about the ending of old relationships. Although I suppose that's also a sense of the full moon is about sort of realizing the truth about the matter, or something reaching its peak. The new moon tends to be about a new beginning, and so that new beginning may be about other people, about new relationships. Perhaps old relationships have reached their limit, and you kind of want to move on, and so do consider that possibility. Also, don't feel, Aquarius, that you've got all the answers. And I know that in some respects, Aquarius, you like to be self-sufficient, but sometimes things come in from the outside that just have to be taken into consideration. You might be minding your own business, avoiding other people, but just something happens. It may be a message. I suppose it could be a realization, but it just may be some message from other people, or something you watch someone do something, and because of this message, because of how you see other people behaving, you realize that something has changed, that in many respects it is a new beginning, that the old has come to an end. So in this sense, Aquarius, you may be influenced by the outside world, and your decision to take a particular initiative may have been fueled by external events. And that's perhaps not something you feel entirely comfortable with, but you shouldn't be bothered by it, because it's the way it works, and you're not completely isolated. So Aquarius, that impact that others have on you really does matter, and you shouldn't discount it, and you shouldn't be worried about it. And in terms of relationships, this new moon may actually spell a new relationship with someone. Perhaps someone you've never met before, or someone you only know a bit, and now you're going to know them a whole lot better. And it could be any kind of relationship. I'm not talking about just one particular area, but it is a good time for a new start in terms of relationships. And at the same time, Aquarius, don't feel that you are powerless. You are not powerless at all. You're quite able to have a dramatic impact if you want to. Through small moves, you can change everything. And if you suddenly want to assert yourself, you feel it's something you need to do, then for sure people will pay attention to you. And maybe there'll be times when you do have to assert yourself over the weekend. Perhaps it's a situation where you actually notice that someone is being a little shy and is holding something back, and you notice this person holding something back and not perhaps being their normal self, and this is an opportunity to draw them in. And in the process, you may be actually be doing something useful. You may be actually doing something kind. So there actually is scope here from a social perspective to show some kindness, to show some inclusivity. So if someone is on the outside and doesn't really know how to respond to the situation and feels left behind or left alone, then you'll notice, and actually you can do something to bring someone in, and in the process you'll be making this person a lot happier. So, be on the lookout for other people. Watch your social environment, all the people around you, especially if you're in a party or something like that, where there's lots of people around you. Do try to consider all of the people there. There just may be someone that needs a little bit of help and needs a little bit of encouragement, and your kindness would, I think, be very much appreciated. Pisces, you are probably not in the mood for doing a great deal this weekend. I don't think you're in an especially extroverted frame of mind. As far as you're concerned, you just want things to be simple and straightforward, and you certainly don't want any complications, and that's fine. I mean, as a Pisces, you are very sensitive, and sometimes all of the things going on around you can just be completely overwhelming, and sometimes you just need to step off the carousel, step off the merry-go-round, whatever, and that would be something that might be worth doing. And Pisces, it's perhaps a good idea to consider your health and well-being. When I talk about health and well-being, I'm not talking about it from a perspective of medical astrology or making comments about what might be wrong with you physically. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about how to make yourself feel healthier on a physical and psychological level, in a general sense. And the new moon this weekend may, for many Pisceans, or perhaps even should for many Pisceans, be a time when you need to just reconsider what you are doing with your health, your relationship to your body. And if you have been planning on doing any kind of activity relating to making yourself healthier, maybe it's a diet, maybe it's an exercise program, the new moon may be the time to start. So if you've been meaning to do something, then the new moon may be the beginning. Of course, if what you're doing is drastic, you've got to get medical advice. I'm not suggesting you just go on a diet just for the sake of it, or you up your exercise to dangerous levels. I'm not talking about that. It's got to be done with advice and making sure that you don't do yourself an injury. But it just may be a good time to start the process. Maybe with this new moon is to start to talking to someone about what you can do to make yourself healthier. And this new moon, once a year it happens, and this new moon in Leo happens once a year, and okay, it can sometimes happen twice a year if the new moon is right at the beginning of Leo, and then you've got a new moon right at the end of Leo, but that's not the case this year. And this new moon is making a sextile to Jupiter, and Jupiter is of course your ruler, so that new moon does have an impact on you. And so I do believe that there are things you can do to make yourself happier and healthier. It might be a good time to give something up. So, for example, if you've got an unhealthy habit, which is uncontroversially unhealthy, I don't know, like smoking cigarettes or drinking excessively, this new moon may encourage you to take control. A good time, for example, to give up smoking now. And so I think this new moon, it's not spectacular, but I think it's really useful. And So if there's anything you're planning on starting, and now is very much that's the time to do it. And it's not just about health, it's about organization, it's about running your life, organizing your life. If you feel that things have started to get a bit chaotic, that you're losing control, you're losing things, perhaps your house or your apartment is just covered in clutter, now is very much the time to bring it all together and to work out what needs to be done, and perhaps throwing things away. That would all, I think, be extremely useful. Oh, talking about throwing things away, there's a beginning of weekend. There's an opposition between the Moon and Pluto. Pluto is about expunging things, getting rid of things. So Moon opposition Pluto, now might be the time when you can start throwing things out and making your life just simple, clearer, and just better organized. And if you sort out your external environment, then that's going to have an impact on you, and you're going to feel just more comfortable, and you're going to feel that your life is just going to be healthier and more productive. And those are my forecasts for the 12 signs. And I'm now going to turn to the I Ching. So I asked the question, what is the weekend going to be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And the first hexagram I got was number 23, splitting apart. Okay, this hexagram is not great. You can see with this hexagram, it's supposed to be a couch. You can see this couch, where are its legs, I suppose, and there is the top. And splitting apart means that the couch is getting split apart. And the indication here is that there are disintegrating forces out there, and they are breaking things apart, and it is really difficult. It's a time of chaos, and short term there probably isn't much we can do about it. So it just may be that there are a couple of things you're involved with that just are not working. They are moving from bad to worse, and it just doesn't seem that there is much you can do about it in the short term. And you might feel that you can take a step back, that you can perhaps find some safe place where you can avoid this these disintegrating forces, things just breaking down. But that's not necessarily the case, because things split. The I Ching tells us that the resting place splits. So even the person at rest is affected by this splitting apart. Now, at this stage, I'm just saying this is just one weekend. Sure, if you were asking this question about your whole life, you might be concerned. But remember what the question is. What is this weekend going to be like? This weekend is only lasting 2 days. So let's get this thing in perspective. So don't worry about it too much. And so there may be this sense that, at least to begin with, that it just may feel that things are going from bad to worse, and that you can't actually avoid the problem. You might feel that you can run away from it, you can escape from it, but it still is still there, and it's still going to affect you. And so that might mean that you just have to accept it and go with it, at least for the time being. And I think it's probably the case that the more you try to fight what's going on, the worse it will be. So if you've got splitting apart, maybe you just have to work it through. And I suppose splitting apart could work on many different levels. I suppose it could be literal. It may be that if you're having trouble with someone, and you've got a question relating to relationships, particularly sort of a fairly new relationship, and you've got splitting apart, that might be a time when you just realize that it's just simply not going anywhere. And it is going to be a little bit trying, but we do have a moving line, and it's the fourth line that moves. And I've already described the fourth line. It is about things splitting apart, and even the couch itself splitting apart, the resting place splitting apart, and we ourselves are impacted by this splitting apart. We can't avoid it, we can't escape from it. But because we've got a moving line, we do move to a new hexagram, and the hexagram I moved to is very different. It's hexagram 35, progress. So I get the impression that something had to end, something had to almost collapse in an almost catastrophic way in order to get progress, to move to the next level. But finally things move. Finally we're being taken seriously. Finally we're being appreciated. And I suppose perhaps we have to see this in the context of the fact that we've got a new moon this weekend. So the new moon, you've got the moon applying to a conjunction of the sun. And as the moon moves to a conjunction of the sun, but just the moon gets weaker and weaker and weaker. It's the moon in Leo. It doesn't work very well in Leo, and it's getting closer and closer to the sun. And at that point where it's conjunct the sun, I know you could say it's a Kazemi conjunction because it's very close, it's very fortunate. I'm not sure if I buy that theory. But so as the moon hits the sun, the moon just gets burnt up. Something ends, something dies. What has died? The old cycle has died. And at that moment, that precise moment, you move from a waning moon, a malefic moon, to a benefic moon. And so perhaps that's what we're seeing here, that the I Ching is reflecting the new moon. And then the moment the new moon has happened, yeah, sure, things are still pretty bad. Things are still in a state of disintegration because the moon is still being burnt up by the sun. But now the moon is moving away from the sun, and things start getting better and better and better. And we start realizing that things are improving. And of course, we are starting to make progress. So it's all about perhaps how we perceive the new moon. But I must emphasize that the I Ching and the astrology, they are totally independent of one another. One has to respect the I Ching. One shouldn't just see it as something relating to astrology. It's not. It's an independent oracle. So it seems overall things get really, really difficult. Things start breaking down. We ourselves are affected by it. And it gets really bad. And then just at the point where things doesn't point where even maybe the point of despair, then things just really start getting better. Things are no longer getting worse. You can't split things up forever. There comes a point when they are completely split up and they can't be split up anymore. And at that point, things do start to improve. Now, talking about new moons, and having done the I Ching, that's what I want to talk about. And yes, there is a new moon this weekend. And so let's have a look at this new moon. So here's the new moon, and this new moon is on August 4th, 2024 at London time, 12:13 p.m. around lunchtime. So this new moon is at 12 degrees 34 Leo. And I think that in some respects it's quite a fortunate new moon, because what I like about this full moon is that the new moon, I'm going to get these right. What I like about this new moon is that it is sextile this conjunction between Mars and Jupiter. And so if you look at this Mars-Jupiter conjunction, the midpoint of that Mars-Jupiter conjunction is what, they're about 6 degrees apart. It's about 12, 13. It's 12, 13, 12 or 13 Gemini. So the new moon is at 12, 13 Leo. So the new moon is sextile that Mars-Jupiter conjunction. So I think for many of us, this new moon is about action, and we can start making things happen. And it's just Leo and Gemini are just working in tandem. Action, ideas, having fortunate ideas. So if there's something we want to get going on, now might be the time, although we have to bear in mind that Mercury is about to go retrograde. So we have to work this through. Yes, it's a new beginning, but we just have to be careful that everything is in the right place and but no one messes us around. But I think it's in some respects it is a fortunate start to the lunar cycle, and I think that I think many of us are really going to be able to use the energy represented by this lunation. Now, I have to, of course, consider some of the negativity of this new moon. I mean, when I look at a new moon, I do want to know what midpoints this new moon is on. And so turning to the 90-degree dial, which you see, 90-degree dial, remember the sun, the new moon, there's the new moon. So what we do is we put the pointer on the new moon. Just to see what the midpoints are. Now, when you look at the midpoints on a new moon, forget the MC and the ace and the ascendant for the moment, because they're specific to the location. But the midpoint that strikes me is the fact that you have got Mars. The new moon is on the Mars Hades and the Mars Kronos midpoint. Now, Hades and Kronos are hypothetical planets. You might take the view that they don't exist, so we don't have to worry about them. In my experience, Hades and Kronos do work, and there is a Hades-Kronos conjunction that's been going on for years, and this new moon brings together the Hades-Kronos conjunction with Mars. And so this new moon does have a somewhat unpleasant feel to it. Again, I think this is mainly going to be in terms of the collective and what's happening in the world. Remember, I was just talking about, from a heliocentric point of view, we got Mars square Pluto this weekend, and we know it's going to be a difficult August. I mean, it has to be. I mean, okay, we got the next full moon on August the 19th is Democratic National Convention. Who knows what's going to happen then? I will actually be talking about that full moon in a moment, relating to Obama. But we just have to watch out with that new moon on the Mars Hades midpoint. It's about bad actions, people doing bad stuff, and perhaps governments doing bad stuff. And so it just may not be personal. I think that from a personal perspective, I actually think the new moon is actually quite good. But from a broader collective point of view, I think there could be problems. Now, looking at things from a point of view of astrocartography, so the question is, where is this new moon likely to have maximum impact? So let me start off by creating a map of the world, and just seeing where the new moon is. So this is the point here. You see this red line here. going through. Now let's just look at, so we've got this red line here. This is all the parts of the world where the new moon is on the ascendant, sorry, on the midheaven. And this is also the parts of the world where you're going to have new moon on the Mars Hades and Mars Kronos midpoint. So these are all these parts of the world. So you can see that this sort of goes through Berlin and Rome and Libya and parts of Africa. So the new moon there may be a certain focus on those capitals which are on that midheaven, whether it's Tripoli in Libya, it could be parts of Africa. I don't know. It could affect Namibia actually. I think actually someone does watch this channel from Namibia. So if you're in Namibia, just watch how that new moon might have an impact. And so, but there's also, you can see that's Rome, that's Berlin, Oslo. So the new moon may have an impact in terms of, just look at what's happening in Rome and Berlin, and is it a new beginning, or is it a new beginning that may be tinged by unpleasantness with that Mars opposition Pluto? I'm sorry, with the fact that the new moon is on. No, let's say it again. The fact that this new moon is on the Mars Hades midpoint and also on the Mars Kronos midpoint. The evil that people do, the evil that governments do, and perhaps responses to protest and so forth. Also, look at where Pluto is on the IC. Pluto on the IC, that goes through London and it goes through Paris. So just as the Olympics are closing, I suppose, at the end of the Olympics, we do have Pluto on the IC, which could be a bit difficult. Things happening affecting London. We know that England is on the brink, or at least the UK is on the brink. After these stabbings in Southport and the riots in Leeds and elsewhere, it's getting a bit red hot in the UK, and I suppose Pluto on the IC is not going to help at the time of this new moon. But it's the same for Paris. There's Pluto on the IC in Paris. The Olympics are not quite over yet. Things can still happen. Now, another part of the world that may perhaps be impacted is South America. My South American geography is not great, but Uranus is on the midheaven. You'd expect Uranus to be on the midheaven going through Venezuela, but it's actually on the midheaven in Colombia. So I don't know how that's, what kind of impact that's going to have. Now, I can relocate this chart. So let's just give an idea. So there's a new moon set for Paris, and you can see that the new moon set for Paris has Pluto exactly on the IC. So, and actually Chiron on the descendant. So that does look like it may be a bit difficult for France. We don't know. I just feel that this Olympics in Paris is high risk, and I think that the new moon is going to. It seems the new moon chart does seem to emphasize this. Now, Venezuela is a part of the world which is getting a lot of attention, with a lot of people questioning the legitimacy of Maduro's win in the presidential election. So I did set the chart for Venezuela. It's not okay. Well, Venezuela, in fact, this is a chart for Caracas. So in fact, I misread the map. You can see that on if you set the chart for Caracas, which is the capital of Venezuela, this new moon has Uranus actually exactly on the midheaven. So you've got Uranus conjunct Algol on the midheaven, and it's sort of square the ascendant. So we know that there are protests in Venezuela. Of course, the United States is doing its best to fan these protests. I'm sure the United States would like nothing better than to initiate regime change in the country. It's a standard playbook, isn't it? Like they initiated regime change in Chile in 1973, but with the overthrow of Salvador Allende. I don't quite think that Nicolas Maduro is in the same league as Salvador Allende, but having this Uranus on the midheaven, is a problem, and I think that it's going to be very difficult for Nicolas Maduro to maintain his power. I know that the United States has recognized his opponent. Again, this is kind of what the United States does. Now, that chart doesn't say for sure that the United States is going to be able to engineer regime change, but certainly it's telling us what we already know with this new moon. I think this new moon is going to be very difficult for Nicolas Maduro and maintaining power, and his stability in Venezuela is certainly going to be negatively impacted. Now, just to be fair, because I just want to make sure that if you're in Africa, I'm not ignoring you. Windhoek. So if I believe Windhoek is Windhoek the capital of Namibia? I just wanted to reset this new moon for Namibia. So you see that, I mean, this is not exact, but this is sort of an example of somewhere in sort of kind of not quite West Africa, but so if you reset this new moon for Namibia, you have the new moon quite close to the midheaven. Uranus is not exactly on the descendant. But I don't know what's happening in Namibia, and that part of the world, I suppose it's not exact. Uranus is not exactly on a descendant, and new moon is not exactly on the midheaven, but maybe Namibia might be a country we need to look out for in the next couple of weeks. I mean, I don't think it's going to be that dramatic, but that is something to consider. Now, one person who I do think will be impacted by this new moon is Barack Obama. So here is Barack Obama's horoscope, August the 4th, 1961, 7:24 p.m. in Honolulu, Hawaii, in my opinion. I know others think that he was born in Kenya or Indonesia or wherever, but I really do think that he was born in Hawaii. And, you know, one thing I don't quite get on this, that people seem to be very obsessed about Barack Obama being born outside the United States. But why does it actually matter? I mean, my understanding is that if you are a natural born American citizen, in other words, if your mother is an American citizen, you are eligible to be president wherever you are born. So even if he had been born in Indonesia or Kenya, surely that wouldn't have any impact on his right to be president. I mean, John McCain was born in Panama, wasn't he? I know Panama was a sort of American possession or something at the time, but I don't quite get that, why it actually matters, because he was a natural born American because he's by virtue of his mother. Anyway, so here's Barack Obama's horoscope, and there is his sun. His sun is at 12 degrees Leo, and there's his Uranus at 20. He's got Uranus on the descendant. So Uranus on the descendant, you know, things happen with Obama, but with Obama's chart, I think the secret to his success, his Vedic chart is just so fantastic. His Vedic chart really showed how well things work for him. But having a new moon on your birthday means that it must be a significant year when things are likely to happen, an important year. And I suppose this links with what people are saying is that effectively Obama is standing for a third term. I mean, I know that's a bit of an exaggeration, but we do know that, as I've said at the beginning, that Kamala Harris is a weak candidate. Her presidency is going to essentially be, if she became president, it would be run by other people. And I suppose these other people might include Barack Obama. Barack Obama remaining a very influential person. I mean, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I don't know. I'm not expressing a political opinion here. Different people have different views on Barack Obama. So that means he's got a solar return chart coming up. And I think it's very important to look at Barack Obama's solar return just to get an idea of, what the year ahead is going to be like for Barack Obama. So here is Barack Obama's chart, solar return for August the 4th, 2024, when the moon returns to where it was when the sun returns to where it was when he was born. And it happens actually very close to the new moon. So his solar return almost exactly coincides with the new moon. Look how close the new moon is. Moon at 12:19 Leo, sun at 12:33 Leo, really just before the new moon. And that new moon is by definition is on his sun, and it's pretty close to his IC, so it is very strong there. And remember what I said, that the new moon is on the Mars Hades and Mars Kronos midpoint. Mars Kronos is about the struggle to be in power. Kronos is about government. Mars Kronos. So with his sun on Mars Kronos, I think that Barack Obama is going to be very keen to be in power, to have power. Let me just see what Alfred Witter says about Mars Kronos. Because it may be relevant. So Mars Kronos, he says, to be independent, autocratic action, the carnal formula for the great leader and organizer, master of the house, police, power of the state. And so sun on the Mars Kronos, the man who acts autocratically or independently, executive of the ruling powers as police officials. So that perhaps supports some of the ideas that really perhaps Obama is running for a third term via his proxy as Kamala Harris. It's kind of in his solar return, if you take the fact that he's got the new moon on his Mars Kronos the new moon is on the Mars Kronos midpoint. So that kind of means that the transiting Mars Kronos midpoint is on his sun, and it's linked up with the new moon. Also, the Mars Hades midpoint as well. Mars Hades is kind of not quite so pleasant. I mean, Mars Hades, Witter says about Mars Hades, fatigue, weariness, atrocity, vulgar actions to cause damage, daily dirty work, the man who tires easily while working, unusually dirty, mean or unwanted work. So there is a contamination there from the Mars Hades midpoint, but just the very fact that the sun is the sun is on those midpoint, the new moon, and just the new moon is it's going to be an important year for Obama. So what else do we notice about this new moon? We notice that, the solar return, Uranus is exactly on the ascendant. Exactly. So I think that this year is, it's going to be a time of shocks. I think that we have to remember also that Uranus is square Obama's Uranus, and with Uranus on the ascendant, I suppose we've just had an assassination attempt on Trump. Obama has Uranus in the 7th house. I think this year Obama needs to it does need to be careful on a physical level in terms of, like Trump did with his security and whatever. It's a potentially quite a dangerous solar return, but it's a very willful solar return, and I think that he does very much want to be in control. I think that is, very important to him. And what about his converse solar return? So this solar return, it's his 63rd birthday. So this is 63 years after he was born. What about the solar return 63 years before he was born, which is 1898? I mean, we looked at converse returns quite recently, and they can be quite a powerful tool in astrology. And this is his converse solar return for 1898. Now, what is exceptional about this converse solar return is we also have Uranus rising. So Uranus is rising, so 63 years before he was born, set for Hawaii, Uranus was rising. 63 years after he was born, Uranus was rising. This is a very Uranus rising year for him, which kind of goes back to what I was saying about his danger of attack. It's happened to Trump. I think he has to be careful. There are people that hate Trump in America. There are people that hate Obama. He does have to be careful, and you look at the converse solar return, and there's Mars Pluto conjunction in the 7th. I suppose it's not easy, is it? And sort of Chiron is on his ascendant as well. So the question is, what is actually going on in Obama's chart at the moment? Now, if we go back to Obama's chart, one thing we have with Obama is that he has got his north node at 27 Leo. He's got his south node at 27 Aquarius, and so Uranus is hitting his nodes. His true node 2718, and he's got his midheaven at 28 Scorpio is also hitting his node. So this is quite a vulnerable place with his nodal axis, and particularly as it links with the midheaven. And so he's got Uranus conjunct the north node, and yes, it's true that Uranus is currently square his Uranus. That makes him vulnerable, and I think that Obama perhaps has to be very careful at the time of the new moon on the full moon on August the 19th. So there's the full moon on August the 19th, the first day of a Democratic convention. And there's the full moon. That's that new moon, that full moon square Uranus. So when we link this up with Obama's chart, we can see he's at that full moon. We've got Uranus pretty much exactly on his IC, and the full moon as itself is on his nodes. So this seems to suggest to me quite an alarming situation. I don't think he's going to be comfortable with whatever happens at the Democratic National Convention. I think it's difficult for him. I think this is a really difficult time. So, and I think if we're talking about Obama as someone who is potentially running for a third term, who is I'm not saying this is the case. I'm just saying there is a view. He may see events which just may not make him too happy. And then, we've got Kamala. There's the question of how happy is he about Kamala Harris? I've read different reports about it. Some I've read, or seen people saying. Some people obviously say he doesn't care. Other people say that he wanted someone else. Other people, perhaps because he delayed his endorsement of her, and that was seen as a sign. But maybe he was just playing a game, and he just wanted her all along. So who knows? Which raises the question, how does Obama get on with Kamala Harris? Now, if it's true that Obama is going to be running the country, as some people say, maybe he's already running a country. By the way, I'm not saying I necessarily believe this. I'm just saying it's just what some people think. So how he gets on with Kamala, I think really does matter. So let's look at the synastry between Barack Obama and Kamala Harris. So there's Kamala Harris's horoscope, and here is the connection between the two. So this is Obama in the middle, and Kamala Harris on the outer wheel. Now, Obama's midheaven is 2854 Scorpio. Kamala Harris's Saturn is at 2828 Aquarius. I think there is something about Kamala that Obama finds difficult. You know, Obama has his own plans, his own aims, as what he wants to achieve. Like he's already achieved a lot, but it seems he perhaps wants to achieve more. And with Kamala's Saturn square his midheaven, there may be just something about Kamala that just prevents him achieving what he wants to achieve. And Kamala's Saturn is on his south node. Remember, Democratic National Convention, 19th, got full moon hitting his nodes. Kamala's Saturn is hitting his nodes. So there could be an issue there. And additionally, you know, if Kamala and Obama, they need to be able to talk, don't they? They need to be able to communicate. And Obama's Mercury is at 2 Leo. Her Mercury is at 1 Scorpio. So their Mercuries are square each other. So I don't think they communicate very well. I think when they're talking to each other, there's just something not entirely right there. There is a certain sense of tension. And look at Kamala's Mars. Her Mars is at 2118, so right on Obama's descendant. So I am not actually convinced that Kamala and Obama actually get on very well. And some people have suggested that Obama's delayed endorsement of Kamala was a sign that he was just playing games, trying to show that he wasn't really interested in her. But I think the delayed endorsement does suggest that really Obama does have problems with Kamala and actually isn't happy with her being the Democrat nominee. I think he has grave doubts, and I think he can see the problems with Kamala, and I think he can see that actually she is a weak candidate, and I think that is shown in the synastry between the two. And finally, I want to look at what's happening, what Obama is experiencing at the time of the election, November the 5th. So here's the presidential elections. I've gone to it for 11 p.m. when the results, I suppose, are coming in. And so how is Obama feeling at the time of the elections? Mars is at 0 degrees Leo, and Obama has a Mercury Black Moon Lilith conjunction. So the Mars is actually quite close to his Mercury. Mars is actually applying to his Mercury. And so that does suggest a certain amount of agitation there at the time of the election. I don't say that it's necessarily critical, but I think he's perhaps going to be somewhat, how shall I put it, somewhat troubled there. And it's also a time when Uranus is pretty close to his IC. So I'm not convinced that it's going to be an entirely easy time for him, the election. Pluto is going to be conjunct his Jupiter, so he's, right now, Obama has Pluto conjunct his Jupiter. Right now, as I'm speaking in August, so he does have a great desire for self-improvement. He really is trying to push it right now, by the way. He really is. He really wants everything. And I think that the solar return indicates that as well, with the fact that the sun is on the Mars-Kronos midpoint. But as far as the election is concerned, I just don't think he's going to be entirely happy in the run-up to the election. I mean, that doesn't mean to say that Kamala's necessarily going to lose, but there is a certain aggravation and annoyance here with Mars about to be conjunct his Mercury. And those are a few thoughts about Obama. Again, it's his 63rd birthday today, and whatever we think about Obama, and there are a range of views about him. It's his 63rd birthday, so this weekend. So I do wish him a happy birthday. So that's it. Those are everything I've got to say about today. I do hope you enjoyed this video. If you did enjoy this video, I'd be grateful if you were to like it. If you are not subscribed and you enjoyed this video, of course I'd be super grateful if you were to subscribe. And if you want to buy me a coffee, there is a link in the description. So thank you very much for watching, and I will talk to you again very soon.